Story time about how I was almost kidnapped. So a little background information, I was 13, and it was the summer going into 9th grade. I was on a road trip with my family, and we needed to stop for some gas. So we stopped at some random gas station, and we see this lady get out of her car and walk in. No big deal though. So we're inside and we're waiting in line to use the bathroom. So we were in the front of the line, and then that lady was behind us, and then there were a few people behind her. So as we're standing in line, she FaceTimes some guy, and then she starts pointing the camera at people around the store, and she would be like, "Oh, do you like this?" And he would say yes or no. Well, then she points the phone at me, and then he goes, "Yeah, that's the one." And my mom and I were super creeped out about this because she was being super loud and she was taking a really long time at this gas station. So my mom goes into the bathroom, and then she starts to talk to me. She starts asking how old I am, where I'm from, and if my mom and I were here with anybody else. Like for part two about how I was almost kidnapped. So like I said, she starts to talk to me and ask me super personal questions, and I'm being vague about everything that I possibly can be. So I go in, I use the restroom after my mom, we grab some snacks, and then she follows us around the whole store, and she didn't even use the bathroom. So we leave the store and we saw the car that she got out of, and it was parked right next to our car, when originally it was parked all the way across the parking lot. And I'm guessing the man who she was on FaceTime with was in the car, and he was sitting right where my car door was. So my mom and I decided to walk around a little bit, and this lady is just following behind us the whole time. So we call my dad, who was across the street at another store. We told him about the situation, so he comes and picks us up, and then he sees the car pick the lady up, and they start following us. So then they followed us for about 25 to 30 freaking miles, and then they ended up turning off on some random road. And I have a feeling if my mom and I didn't pay such close attention to what they were doing, I would have been kidnapped and trafficked.
Storytime of how I figured out that my sister was trying to kill me. So me and my sister were like best friends when we were little, but she was a very, very jealous person. So years and years go on, but her jealousy seems to start to grow. So I never really thought about it until I found out that she really wanted me dead. But throughout the years, she would do little things to get me hurt. For example, she pushed me off the top of our treehouse and I ended up breaking my arm. But every time I got hurt, my family would baby me and she would get even more mad. So at this time, we're about 16 years old, and I had to go in her room to get her laundry. And under her laundry, I found her diary, or journal, or whatever you call it. I was flipping through the pages, I found out some interesting and crazy things. Then one was named The Perfect Murder. What an original name. She had this big, huge dresser in her room. She went into a lot of detail about how she was going to kill me. But it stated that she was going to push the dresser on top of me and jump on it until I, then scream for help. I'm running out of time, like for part 2. Part 2 of how I found out that my sister was trying to kill me. Continuing on with the story, after I read what I read in her diary, I decided it was best to keep it to myself. So about a month and a half later, I start to think to myself, and I'm like, okay, maybe she's not actually gonna do it. Y'all, I don't know why, but I was literally not scared that my sister was like about to kill me. So about 2.5 months after I read what I read in her diary, she calls me into her room and in this fakest voice ever goes, "Sissy, why are you being so distant from me?" I just looked at her like she was crazy. Then she goes, "I know you read my diary." At that exact moment, she looked psycho. I don't know what I was thinking, but right after she said that, my reflex was to knock her out. So I knocked her out, then I stomped on her head. I called my mom into the room and read her the diary, or whatever the heck my sister put in there. Mind you, while I'm reading my mom this diary, she's still knocked out on the floor. My mom then continues to say she's going to put her in a mental hospital. So to this day, my sister's in a mental hospital, and if you're listening to this and you ever get out, please don't kill me. I'm actually living an amazing life right now.
Story time. So ever since I was like 8 years old, I've always gotten headaches. And I don't know why. I drink water, I eat enough food, and I get enough sleep, but I still just be getting headaches for no reason. Anyways, my freshman year, someone convinced me that I had a brain tumor. I really believed it too. It was quite embarrassing. So I was doing cheer at the time, and I was getting nosebleeds like every single day, along with a raging headache. And they would always happen randomly. Like I wasn't doing anything to cause them. It just happened. So one day, in the middle of my math class, my nose just started bleeding. Before that, I had a terrible headache, and the girl that was sitting next to me told me my nose was bleeding. As I'm cleaning my nose, the girl's like, "I noticed that you get a lot of headaches and nosebleeds. My grandpa had a brain tumor, and I think that's what you have." And I was just sitting there like, I guess this is how God wanted me to go out. The whole day I was stressing. Then when I get home, I start writing my mom a goodbye letter and picking out the clothes I want at my funeral. Then I told my sister about it, and she smacked me upside the head and called me stupid.
Story time of when my eyelid literally got burnt off. It was the worst time for this to possibly have happened to me on my 16th birthday. And what's even worse about it is I was already sick. I wasn't already feeling good, and my mom was like, hey, we're throwing you a party in the valley. Come on down. I didn't want to disappoint, so I went. And the whole time, I was literally on the couch with a headache and the chills. We're getting towards the end of the party, and my mom was like, come on, we're gonna sing happy birthday to you. So with no energy, I say, okay. As soon as they're done singing happy birthday to me, I go and I blow out my candles, right? And then they tell me to bite the cake. So I bite the cake, and all of a sudden, my face plants into the cake. But that's not it. Because as it turns out, when they pushed my head in the cake, one of the candles was still hot. And my eyelid landed right on that candle.
Storytime about my extremely creepy neighbors. So a little background information, I was 12 years old and I was in 6th grade. And my family and I lived in a really small town where everyone knew everyone. But our new neighbors had been building their house next to us for the past 4 years. And finally, when they were done with the house, this house was huge. I mean, probably because there were like 8 people moving into the house. There was the mom, the dad, 4 kids, and their grandparents. So like 8 people. But I was super excited because I was like, okay, this is awesome. I get to meet some new friends. But after 2 weeks of not seeing anybody playing in the backyard or anybody on the school bus, I started to think that their family was super weird. And everyone in our neighborhood liked to gossip, and everyone was saying how they barely see the people who had just moved in. So my mom decided to take one for the team and make some brownies, take them over to the house, and I ended up going with her. So we go up to the house, we knock on the door, and one of the kids came and opened the door, but the dad ran over and grabbed him. Like for part 2. Part 2 about my extremely creepy neighbors. So like I said, my mom and I took some brownies over there, and one of the kids opened the door, and when he opened the door, he had a bunch of bruises all over his body. The dad came running over and ripped his son from the door and slammed the door in our faces, and all you could hear was him screaming at his son. So my mom and I went to walk away before the door opened, and he was like, sorry, my son knows better than to open the door to strangers. He took the brownies, and then I asked him if I could have a sleepover with one of his daughters, and he was super hesitant at first, but he said that I could only have a sleepover with her if it was at my house and not theirs, which my mom was completely fine with anyways, because she thought that it was a little bit weird that his son had bruises covering his whole body. So that night when she came over to sleep over my house, I asked her how her brother got all those bruises all over his body, and she said that he just fell down some stairs. But after that, we became best friends, and we would literally hang out like 5 times a week until the one day I knocked on their door to ask if she wanted to come over, and her dad answered the door and said that she was gone. Like for part 3. Part 3 about my super creepy neighbors. So like I said, I became best friends with their daughter, but the one day I went over her house to ask if she wanted to come over, and her dad answered the door and said that she was gone. And when I asked when she would be back, he was like, she went to go live with her mom, so probably never. Which was super weird because she never mentioned that she had another mom. So fast forward 2 months, my family and I are sitting around the fire pit when we hear someone scream help. But we weren't sure if that's what we were actually hearing because it was so quiet, and then all of a sudden we heard someone banging on my neighbor's basement door. You know those metal doors that people usually have outside of their house that lead down basement steps? Yeah, well that's where the banging was coming from. So my dad hopped over the fence to see if that's where the screaming was coming from also. And then not even a minute later, my dad hopped back over the fence, and it looked like he saw a ghost, but he ran inside, called 911. Because I was so young, the only thing my parents told me about that whole situation was that the girl that I was friends with was still alive, and her parents were keeping her in the basement along with 2 of her other siblings. But then we also found out that they weren't even her real parents. They were kidnapped at the hospital when they were born. Story time about how my best friend waxed off my eyebrow in my sleep, so I cut her hair. So a little background information. I was 14 and in 8th grade, and my best friends and I were having a sleepover. And right before we had went to sleep, we were all talking about this one TikTok trend that was going around. It's like this trend where girls would go and put wax on their boyfriends while they were sleeping and then take it off. Well, I didn't think anything of it, so that night I went to sleep. I should have knew this was gonna happen because I'm always the butt of the joke whenever it comes to our friend group. Like, I'm always the one getting picked on. Like, there was this one thing that my friend Ashley saw online. It was like, if you put white nail polish on your teeth, it would make your teeth whiter. So who did they decide to try it out on? Yup, me. And yes, I could have said no, but these were my best friends. I didn't think that they would intentionally hurt me. Anyway, so like I said, I go to sleep, and all of a sudden I wake up in the middle of the night to something very, very, very hot on my face. I open my eyes, and all of my friends are standing above me with their flashlights on. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how my best friend waxed off my eyebrow while I was asleep, so I cut her hair. So like I said, went to sleep, didn't think anything was gonna happen, and then I wake up and all of them are standing above me with their flashlights on. And then I realized that Ashley has a stick in her hand. Once I realized that there was wax on the other end of the stick, I started screaming. So then Kelsey decides to cover my mouth. She's like, shh, it's not that bad. I promise. Like, don't worry. I get up real quick. I run to the bathroom and there's like this pink transparent wax on my eyebrow. It was about 3 a.m. and we're all sitting there trying to find ways to get this wax off of my eyebrow. Well, then Amber goes, I'm tired of this, grabs it and rips it off my forehead. So I'm crying at this point. Like, I'm in 8th grade. I'm about to have my glow up and y'all gotta ruin it with taking my eyebrow off. So nobody went to sleep for the rest of the night because they thought that I was gonna do something to them. So I acted all cool. I was like, no, it's fine. I can just draw it on. When in reality, I was going to cut this hair, like for part 3. Part 3 about how my best friend waxed off my eyebrow in my sleep, so I cut her hair. So like I said, nobody went to sleep for the rest of the night. I acted like it was okay because I was plotting in my head that I was going to cut one of their ponytails off. So I go over to their house next week, and every single day that week they were telling me how good my drawn on eyebrow looked. It didn't actually look good, and none of my hairs were growing back. So around 12 o'clock, all of us are ready to go to bed. I'm laying down pretending that I'm sleeping, and they think I'm sleeping, so they're over there talking shit about me on her bed, Ashley's bed. I wasn't sure which one's eyebrow I should rip off because the one ripped off my eyebrow, but then the other one put the wax on my eyebrow. They were like, she's sleeping. I don't think she's gonna do anything. She doesn't even have the balls to do anything. So around 4 in the morning, everybody is dead asleep. I get up and Ashley had her hair in a ponytail. So that was easy enough. I grabbed a pair of scissors out of my book bag and I cut her hair off.